Today I decided to give you guys a review of the Amazon TV show Spider-Noir, starring Nicolas Cage. This is a series based on the comic book character of the same name, and is at least inspired, if not strictly based, on Nick Cage's version of the character from the Into the Spider-Verse films. There is a line in the first episode implying that those aren't the same characters, but considering the fact that he looks exactly the same and is played by the same actor, you could infer it either way. But regardless, this is Nick Cage as Spider-Man on the small screen. And is it any good? Well, let's get into it now. The basic premise shows Ben Riley, a private investigator, who has an alter ego known as the Spider. He was bitten by a not radioactive spider, but a man spider who was experimented on during World War One, and this gives him spider abilities. And when he's not investigating crimes, he uses his abilities to help him in his endeavors. But he's been retired for some years now, but has to come out of retirement when new super-powered beings start arriving all over Manhattan. It's up to Ben Riley to find out the source of these superpowered beings with the help of his friend Robbie, his assistant Janet, and a femme fatale known as Cat Hardy. That's the basic premise of the show, so now let's get into the good. First and foremost, the show can be watched in either black and white or in color. Personally speaking, I would definitely recommend the black and white. I think it looks really good, and I did compare several shots in color, and I just didn't care too much for the in color look of it. The show was inspired by 1930s and 40s detective noir films, and those films are always in black and white, being older movies, and it kind of adds to the aesthetic. Just smoky, backlit, dingy looking bars and back alleys and the nighttime sky shots, everything about it just fits better in black and white. And while I don't think the show is bad in color, and if you just don't care for black and white, I could see it being watched that way and still being enjoyed, I think it's the only real way to watch the show is without the color. And I think it was a great aesthetic choice for the show. Something else I really enjoy about the show is the weird and macabre kind of imagery. From the man spider sequence, which is just kind of nightmare fuel, to the hallucinations, and even Nick Cage just acting like a spider. It adds a certain sense of weird and kind of macabre nature to some of the episodes. It's not littered throughout the whole show, but it does show up every now and then and does give the show kind of a more darker edge at times. Another positive of the show would have to be the characters. Nick Cage plays Ben Riley very well, and he is not crazy and quirky like he can be in a lot of his movies. He's more reserved this time around, but he does have that 1930s kind of quick, speakeasy kind of talk, but subdued enough to where it's believable and not over the top. When he's in the suit, he actually moves pretty well, and I'm sure it's a stunt double for many shots, considering the fact that the man is in his early 60s. But he's energetic, he's lively, he doesn't seem like he's phoning it in, and he's really great as the character. And this is a really awesome version of Spider-Man. Another positive would have to be the side characters. Cat Hardy, who is essentially this TV show's version of Felicia Hardy, aka Black Cat, is really great. She's played very well by Lee Jun Lee. She's essentially a lounge singer who also owns the bar in which she sings in, but she's actually working for the main villain of the show, Silvermane. Speaking of which, Silvermane is played by Brendan Gleeson, and he's magnificent on the show as well. He's essentially a ruthless gangster type who has the city in the palm of his hand. Something like a Kingpin type, but he actually is based on a character from the comic books. And he's ruthless, but not comically so. He, can be friendly and nice enough, but he is only looking out for himself. And if you get in his way, he will take you down, as shown several times throughout the series. He has some superpowered right-hand men in the show, one of which is Tombstone, played by Abraham Papula. And I actually thought this character was a lizard at first, because he does have, scales on his face. But no, he's just this show's version of Tombstone. But he's pretty intimidating. He's kind of like a sympathetic villain, and he's not really a bad guy, but he's kind of forced into it, which you find is true of most of the villains in the show. Jack Houston is probably my favorite villain in the show. He plays Flint Marko, aka the Sandman, and him and Kat essentially have a secret love affair going, and they are going behind Silvermane's back to try to be together. But his more or less disease of being the Sandman stops him from actually leaving with her, and he's a pretty compelling character as well. And there's Janet, played by Karen Rodriguez, which is Ben Riley's secretary or assistant, and she's really great in the show. She kind of keeps Ben grounded, and is something of a comic relief character at times. And there's also his best friend, Robbie Robertson, played by Lamorne Morris, and he's also a great character and is a reporter who essentially gets pictures of the Spider for the Daily Bugle, essentially taking up that aspect of Peter Parker without actually being Peter Parker. So overall, the cast is really good. All the side characters and main characters are pretty great in the show. Hell, even Andy Robinson of Dirty Harry and Hellraiser fame shows up as a character named Ogden, and he's really great too. Another positive has to be the story itself. It basically shows Ben Reilly returning to his role as the Spider after being on a hiatus for 5 years because of the death of the love of his life at the hands of a criminal. They never specifically say who killed his wife, and maybe they'll set that up for future seasons. But it destroyed him emotionally, and he's become reclusive and just does detective work as a private investigator, try to keep his mind off of things. But when superpowered beings show up in the city, he redons the Spider persona, and with the help of his buddy Robbie, who finds out who these superpowered beings are and where they came from, this actually eventually leads him to secrets from his own past, which ties him to the villains. And so it's a pretty compelling little story. It is interesting how they interlock all the characters, and everyone has something to do, and every character is actually important to the story and intertwined in an interesting way, which is kind of hard to do when you're juggling this many people, but they found a way to do it pretty well here. Another positive would have to be the action scenes. Whenever the Spider's throwing down with dudes, it's kind of fun and actiony and pulpy, and there's people shooting each other and him using his abilities to make them shoot at each other and swing car doors and boxes at people. It's just fun, ground level kind of action that fits very well into a TV show, although it never really quite reaches the excitement or heights of the movies. But considering the fact that the budget is much smaller, they very smartly use what they have wisely and makes for an entertaining and exciting action sequences. And they keep the more expensive stuff, such as web swinging, to a minimum, so it doesn't drain the budget, I'm sure, and it really works well for this kind of setting. So now that I've gotten the good out of the way, let's get into some of the more not so good aspects. For one, I do think that some of the effects, such as Spider-Man swinging around, do look a little bit rubbery, even in black and white. I do think the black and white helps hide some of the cheaper effects, but whenever you do see him swinging, I don't know what it is. It kind of looks like, early Spider-Man movies, like the first or second film. And I know the TV budget's not as high as other budgets, but I do think some of those shots look a little bit cartoony, and maybe that's, kind of by design to get since it's somewhat otherworldly, but it doesn't always work. Mind you, those shots are pretty brief, and they're only here and there. But something else that I did miss about the show is there's not a whole lot of web swinging. We do see him swinging high up in the very beginning of the show, but you don't really see that again throughout the rest of the series. Oh, you'll see him on top of a building for sure, and he might swing to the top of one, but, you're not going to see pretty much any Spider-Man just swinging through the city leisurely like you do in the other films. He pretty much keeps it to a minimum and only does it when he has to. And while this is not necessarily the kind of show, I would like to have seen at least a couple more scenes of him just swinging around doing the old Spider-Man thing. And lastly, I do think the show wraps up a little too neatly and feels a little bit kind of rushed in the final episode. Not to get into any spoilers, but the Spider essentially defeats the remaining villains, and you kind of get a happy, everything's concluded kind of ending with the Spider returning and the people of New York accepting him back. There's nothing wrong with that, and that actually leads for a pretty fun and entertaining finale, but it felt like there could have been at least 2 more episodes. There's pretty much no filler in this show, and though there are a couple episodes that kind of deal with how he got his powers and this laboratory setting where they're trying to reverse engineer his powers, everything else is pretty much straightforward. But everything leads to a finale that wraps up rather quickly. And this is an 8-episode show, and I think they probably could have extended it to 10 and fleshed out the ending a little bit more. The show does such a damn good job at telling its story that it feels like, oh yeah, we kind of just need to finish this up. Hurry up. The bad guys get caught, and the Spider saves the day. It's really could have been fleshed out at least a couple more episodes, I feel. But apart from those minor gripes, this was a really entertaining show and some of the best Spider-Man content that I've seen in a long time. I really do hope that we get at least a couple more seasons of this. I don't want it to overstay its welcome like some shows do have a habit of doing. However, I think if this went on for, say, 3 or maybe 4 seasons, it would be really great. And that way Nicolas Cage wouldn't out-age the role. But regardless, This was a great show through and through, and I had a damn good time. And while I do think it could have had a little bit more Spider-Man action, I think the actual detective part of it was the most interesting part, and I think it works very well for television, and I have myself a great time. If you like old school noir type movies like The Third Man, or if you're just a fan of anything Spider-Man, I think you'll have a good time. I'm going to give this show an 8 out of 10. It is almost a 9, and I could see maybe like a future season getting a little bit higher, but I think it wrapped up a little too early. And I think that we could probably have a few more interesting villains in future seasons. Not to say that his villains were good this season, but I could use a little bit more. But apart from that, small gripe, it's a damn good show and one that I highly recommend. Well, that's my review. I'm sorry for the long delay between this video and my last one, but work has been hectic and I've just been dealing with some more personal stuff. And I know I say this every time, but I am going to have my next one out sooner. And I already have some of those films, so I just got to do some editing. So expect the next 1 or 2 videos a lot quicker. I thank you for your patience. Go check out Spider-Man Noir. It's available now on Amazon Prime, and it's definitely worth watching. Nick Cage is back in action, and he does a damn good job as the Spider. I thank y'all for watching, and peace out.